Yeah, let's give folks another minute or two, I think. I imagine people will continue to join, but I think we should go ahead and get going. Welcome everybody to the June edition of the EPSP Connects virtual seminar series. If this is your first time attending one of these events, we are a group of surface process researchers that pull together usually monthly virtual events for the community. Our goal is to provide events that allow the global surface process community to connect and share research, work, and teaching experience. With me today from the EPSP Connects committee are Roberto Fernandez, Baiki Aniset, and Shashank Anand. Shashank and I will be handling questions. Roberto and Shashank, will you briefly introduce yourselves? And Roberto, will you explain how questions will work?
All right, sure. Well, you already said my name. So hello, everyone. Good to have you here. If you've been to one of these before, we typically use the chat feature for questions, but we're going to use the Q&A option today. So people will be able to ask questions anonymously if they prefer. And then there should also be an option in there to upvote a question. So if someone asks a question and you're interested in that answer, instead of posting it again or something similar, just find that option to make sure that it's raised. So we're going to try to answer questions based on those rankings. So if we see a lot of interest in a given question, we'll prioritize that.
Hello everyone. This is Shashank from Texas A&M, and yeah, thanks for joining us today. And over to you, Tyler.
Okay, thank you. I guess I should introduce myself. I am Tyler Doan. I am an assistant research professor with the Desert Research Institute. So today we have a panel on research careers outside of the tenure track. Often the goal for someone getting a PhD is to land a tenure track position, but as we all know, these positions are few and far between, extremely competitive, and they may not be geographically consistent with one's desires. There are, however, many other rewarding potential career paths beyond the tenure track that allow for you to use your skills and address interesting and important problems. Within academia, we often do not know much about these positions, how to get them, and what a career is like. So we wanted to highlight these careers and give some insight to any potential job seekers out there with a panel of 4 researchers with these academic-like positions that are beyond the tenure track. So today we are excited to have Dr. Kathleen Rodriguez, Dr. Kate Leary, Dr. Demetrios Fitonitis, sorry, I think I said that wrong, and Dr. Gunter Legee here, and they are willing to share their experiences with us. The whole point of this is to hear from them, so I will allow them to introduce themselves a little bit more fully. So if we can we start with Dr. Kathleen Rodriguez? Will you please just introduce yourself, your position, and where you work?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Like Tyler, I'm also an assistant research professor at the Desert Research Institute in the Reno, Nevada campus. I operate the luminescence dating lab at the Institute. And my research is focused mostly on luminescence dating applications to geological, geomorphological, and archaeological investigations.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Kate Leary, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Kate Leary. I am the Water Education Program Manager for the New Mexico Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources. It's basically New Mexico State's geologic survey. My position is primarily outreach to adults, specifically state legislators in New Mexico. So educating kind of our decision makers on water science, policy, and community perspectives.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Dimitrios Fitsinidis?
Hi, I'm Dimitrios. I'm a computational climate scientist at Argonne National Lab. My research focuses mainly on numerical modeling in interdisciplinary research subjects, both on natural and engineered systems, with application ranging from rivers, coastal, and atmospheric flows. So, in general, I'm working at the intersection between mechanics, computational fluid dynamics, and high performance computing.
Okay, thank you. And then last, Dr. Guntur Legi.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So I'm a researcher at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm an ice sheet modeler. So my role is to represent land ice in every shape and form in a global climate model to simulate the climate and its interaction and the interaction with different components such as ocean, land, atmosphere, and so on. And I'm primarily interested in sea level rise in the future and the past, and also future water availability around the world. I also have another appointment. I lead an early career development section at NCAR, which consists of providing professional development for early careers that is beyond just scientific the achievement, but like leadership or communication skills that we typically don't get when we're in grad school. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, very cool. Thank you. So I think we have sort of a broad range of, surface process adjacent research interests here, which I think is great. So hopefully folks in the audience can find some similarities with one of the four of you. So you've introduced us a little bit to yourselves. Can you sort of each give a brief trajectory, maybe starting from undergraduate or graduate school to your current position? Maybe let's go in the inverse order that we just went in. So we can start with you, Guntur, if that's okay.
That's okay. So since undergrad.
It doesn't need to be undergrad, whatever feels most relevant to you, I suppose.
So, well, in brief, I'm a applied mathematics major, and I'm French to begin with. So I did my undergrad in France, and at the time when I was doing my bachelor's degree, I wanted to become a math teacher. So that didn't pan out, but I ended up doing my master in applied mathematics, and then doing grad school in New Mexico, in Socorro, New Mexico, in applied mathematics. And this is when I ended up doing an internship at the San Amos National Lab on biogeochemistry. And this is when I met a lot of people working on climate modeling, which I didn't even know was a thing at the time. So this took me a little bit out of my realm of expertise, but in an area that I really wanted to explore, which is the applied mathematics realm. So I would apply my skills to real world problem. And within this experience, I was introduced to ice sheet modeling, which I didn't know was a thing either, especially not in New Mexico. And so I was introduced to this field, which requires a lot of mathematics and computational mathematics. That's what I've been doing since. So that's me.
Okay. Dimitrios?
So my undergrad studies were in civil engineering. I got a focus on water resources during my undergrad. Back home, like in Greece, after my graduation, I did masters in hydraulic engineering, kind of the standard path for people who want to go in grad school. But during that time, I started getting involved in very interdisciplinary projects with my advisor. So I decided I want to continue working on environmental sciences, and I'm environmental engineering. So I did a second master's in environmental engineering before I come to the States for my PhD at the University of Illinois, where I started working on environmental fluid dynamics, and at the same time I kind of explored, like a really high-end computing, how we can do we can use large supercomputers that were not available back home, and how we can use these for solving complex problems related to environmental fluid dynamics. After my graduation, I got into my postdoctoral studies, like my postdoctoral, appointment, and I continue working since then in the area of environmental fluid dynamics and high performance computing.
Okay, thank you. Kate?
Hi. So from undergrad, I guess I have a BA in geology from Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, where I primarily studied Earth surface processes. I did a 6-month internship at the USGS after college at the Cascade Volcano Observatory to not doing anything on volcanoes, but actually in their debris flow group, and doing kind of experimental debris flow studies at the debris flow flume in Oregon. And that got me really into experimental geomorphology. And so I pursued a PhD in fluvial geomorphology at Arizona State University, where I primarily looked at sediment transport processes in sand-bedded river systems, both experimentally and then some field work. After that, I did a postdoc at UC Santa Barbara. And then I entered academia actually and worked as an assistant professor for 3 years at New Mexico Tech here in Socorro, New Mexico, where I still am. I was not super thrilled being in academia, and so I decided to pursue a position that came up in the Geologic Survey here in New Mexico, looking at that is basically education outreach, like I said earlier, to state legislators and other decision makers in the state. And so I've been in that position for about a year now.
Okay, very good. And Kathleen? You're muted, sorry.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I grew up in Canada. I'm Canadian. I did my my undergrad and my master's degrees in Canada, and then subsequently moved to the States. My undergraduate degree was actually in biology, strangely enough. But about halfway through that, I took an interest in geology and switched course completely. My master's degree was at the same school. This is where I learned, I got involved in luminescence dating, which is really the heart of what I do now. And that project was actually focused on archaeological dating of a site in Florida. I knew nothing about archaeology, but it was a fun way to explore it and also learn more about the technique. So that was great. I moved to Nevada to pursue a PhD at the Desert Research Institute, which is where I still am now. Go figure. That project was largely focused on luminescence dating applied to fluvial systems, looking at long-term incision rates from terrace deposits, and deposits in perched caves. And then I did a postdoc at the Desert Research Institute. And that was an interesting project, also based on luminescence dating, applied to volcanic systems, dating tephras in the Great Basin. And I kind of grew up into the assistant research professor position from that point when I finished my postdoc.
Okay. I think some of these trajectories are just fairly different than, how people end up in typical tenure track positions, right? And so I think it's good to see how these have occurred. I also, just hearing all of your trajectories, I'm always reminded of sort of the moments in my life where a seemingly inconsequential decision I made totally was a fork in the road and led me to where I am now. And it's just interesting to think back about what they were, those summer internships, or a position became available sort of just by chance, and that is what led me down this path. So I will turn it over to Shashank for the next question, but thank you for sharing your trajectories.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's actually very interesting to see such a different paths for different people. We were curious if you all can go a bit into depth about the relevancy of your degrees or the path you have taken to your current positions, like things that mattered, didn't matter, and yeah, how useful you find the things that you learned from your degrees to your current positions. So we can maybe follow the same order. You can start with Dimitrios.
So I guess my answer will be a little bit boring. Everything is somehow connected. Like although it seems that I was jumping from civil engineering, hydraulics, then environmental fluid dynamics. So all this path is interconnected. Right now, my position, I regularly pull different tools from my toolbox from even back from the undergrad all the way to my PhD. So I would say that everything plays a role at the everyday, activities, everyday tasks I have. So I would say that all the experience play a role. Some more recent, maybe what I'm doing, like my bread and butter is connecting to large supercomputing facilities, doing some gigantic simulations. But this doesn't mean that my undergrad hydraulics or like environmental processes from back in my masters do not play a role when I solve a problem. So I would say that everything is somehow connected, and all the experience and backgrounds and everything that I have done somehow plays a role on what I'm doing every day.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Gunter?
Yeah. So as I said, my degree is in applied mathematics. And what led me to being the model I am today was taking an internship that I knew, like I said, in biogeochemistry, and I knew nothing about biogeochemistry when I did this. But though, people knew about it, they read my CV, but they still wanted me. And so it was that chose me less because of my knowledge in that topic, but more about my motivation and my will to discover new fields. And they were, pretty confident that I could connect the dots based on what they wanted to do because it was still computer based. So, and then similarly to, when I continued to my ice sheet modeling work, I knew nothing about ice sheets or glaciers whatsoever. So I had to learn this on the fly. And again, what got me there through all of this was my willingness to connect the dots, but also my deep interest and curiosity. So my math background definitely helped me because when you go into the modeling world, trying to understand algorithm or mathematical equation, things like this, they are fairly complex. Well, it's good to have some mathematical knowledge, but the science side is my weak point, I would say, because I didn't have as much in-depth knowledge in that area. But it's okay because other people know that, and so I'm just complementary to other knowledge. So, so yeah, I would say there's no one relevant degree to get to where I am. We have many modelers in my capacity that come from very different background. But in the end, if you're willing to learn things, you're good. You're just good to go.
Yeah, that's actually a good summary. Small things matter. Over to you, Kate.
Yeah, I think for my current position, so I have a PhD in geology and with a focus in fluvial geomorphology. And I would say that suits my current position very well, but is not necessary for my current position. And I think, you know, what the skills I learned during my PhD in terms of, you know, how to learn, like learning new things quickly, is something that I definitely use in my current position a lot, in terms of basically learning how water systems work in different regions of New Mexico, like being able to actually be familiar with all of these nitty-gritty details from all these different regions. I'm not sure I would have had those skills. Well, certainly if I had done a master's, that would have given me those skills as well. But that's kind of the important part, I think, for my degree. I don't really do that much research anymore. It's more outreach and education. And so that just means that I'm using less of those research skills from my grad school degree, which is fine.
Yeah. Dr. Rodriguez.
Yeah, so like the others, I think there was not necessarily one degree that was less valuable than others. I'm maybe a little bit unique because I'm hyper focused on this very niche technique, but the skills that I acquired and the knowledge that I gained, it was additive, and I learned bits and pieces throughout each of those degrees. So I wouldn't know half as much had I not had the experiences, the diverse experiences that I had throughout each of those degrees, starting in undergrad, but then into the master's and PhD. So I think that they were all valuable for making me the research scientist that I am now. Yeah.
I think I can see like a very different path, like one where you are going in one direction that really everything is additive versus when you have different path, but still you have some particular skill set that you can use for your current position. Like for myself, if I go back when applying for graduate school, I got into a graduate school because of a certain internship, not because of the degree, but then again, my degree helped in a bit. So yeah, it's very nice to see like such a different paths that are working. Gunter, you want to add something?
Yeah. One thing I'd like to add, when I was in grad school and I was hearing similar stories that this panelist talking about here, you know, they like your actual degree can lead you to many paths that you don't know about anymore. And at the time, because I was just focused in my topic of study, I couldn't even imagine that it could be true. And so I was having a hard time to believe it. It's only, you know, as time went that I've understood what it actually meant. So if you feel this way, that's how I felt as well at the time.
Thank you for sharing that. Now I'll hand it over to Tyler for the next question.
Yeah, and I see that there's a question in the Q&A. We will get to those towards the end of the hour. We'll reserve some time for questions from the audience. But that is a good segue, I think, Gunter, to this next question, which if you could briefly all describe just how you found your current position. And let's start with Kathleen. Sorry, you're muted again, Kathleen.
I should really just stop doing that. I think
It's
I
okay.
think I'm helping, but apparently not. Okay, so I briefly talked about my trajectory. I've been at the same institution since I started my PhD in 2015. So I'm probably pretty unique here in that I grew into the current position that I have, and followed a pretty linear path there. So probably unique in the group.
Okay. Kate?
Yeah, my how I found my current position was also, I think, relatively unique. I live in Socorro, New Mexico, which is where New Mexico Tech is, as well as the New Mexico Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources, where I work now. I went on a river trip down the San Juan with my now boss, who, while I was on the San Juan, was talking about this position that I now have. And it just sounded really interesting to me. I was pretty disillusioned by academia at that point, and got back from the river and basically shot her an email and was like, hey, I'm interested in that position. I think I would be good at it. Would you consider like my application if I were to apply? And it was just a very positive experience in that way. And I think something I took from that, as well as other kind of situations I've had in the past, like when I got my postdoc, for example, I met my postdoc advisor at a conference like after hours out at beers. And like I think that that eventually turned into a research relationship with that person that turned into a postdoc. And it was very kind of serendipitous. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities out there. You just have to be kind of open to hearing about them. And you never know kind of when an opportunity might come along, and being open to those opportunities when they do come along. And I think like coming out of a PhD, I very much tried to follow like a pretty rigid path. And it didn't always occur to me that, oh, there are these other opportunities out there. And once I started looking for them, they did kind of appear.
I think that's a really good point. Just just similarly tried to follow a very rigid path, and just sort of putting yourself out there and being open to other possibilities allows you to see them, and they really are out there. And just going to, social events at conferences, social events on the river lead to things sometimes. So that's great to hear. Gunter?
So the way I found my position might sound a bit boring compared to the two previous experience, because I was doing my postdoc at University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, and during my postdoc, I saw a job position that opened at NCAR, where I am today, on exactly what I did for my PhD, and so I applied there, and I was lucky enough to be on their shortlisted candidates. So that's, sorry, boring, but that's just how simple it was.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, we are still talking about jobs, so it's okay if they are a little bit boring sometimes. Demetrios?
So just before, like at the end of 2019, just before the COVID, I went to the last pre-COVID conference. I was still a PhD student, not really sure what I will do, thinking of tenure track positions, and really not knowing what will happen very soon. I went to this conference, I gave a talk. Then someone approached me. This someone was my postdoc supervisor who told me, hey, what you're doing fits a lot like some projects we're getting. Would you be interested? And I'll be honest, my initial answer was, I'm not sure when I'm graduating. I didn't have a thesis ready. I didn't know anything. Then COVID happened, and I was basically locked for more than 6 months doing just what I do, like um, computational research. I'm probably one of the few people that didn't get distracted by COVID because everything happens online. So while I realized that I'm almost done, I got an email from him like mid-April or something like that. Oh, I'm still having the position. Are you interested? And then I was like, okay, I don't know what will happen. Probably I can fill the gap of working remotely with a postdoc position. I'm close to graduation. So I applied. I got the position. I have been working remotely for 3 years since then. And I started working in person like this last January. So in my case, the research position I have was almost like a promotion from postdoc. But I would say that I just followed what I like to do. I got very lucky, I assume, but yeah, I picked the postdoc based on convenience that I will be able to work remotely, and this ended up being like my career today. So I would say just follow. Also, a way to think about this is just follow things you like, and yeah, sometimes things work out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean, that's just sort of reinforces what, especially Kate was, it's just being open to opportunities and presenting your ideas. And yeah, I think things often can work out. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that.
Okay, so I think the next question would be if you can talk a bit about the unique challenges and the rewards of your position, especially like people who are in academia, they know what are the pros and cons. But when we are going into non-academic jobs, we don't know what are the challenges there in that position or what can be the rewards that you can find there. So if you can talk a bit about that, starting from Kathleen.
I did it this time. Okay. So some challenges about my position. Okay, so the Desert Research Institute, where I'm employed, we are all soft money funded. For those of you who don't know what that means, it means that our salaries have to be generated ourselves through grants and contracts. This is pretty different than most academic settings, and even most, research institutes where there is a hard money component. So you'd say 30% of your salary is supported by the state, and the rest of it is soft money that you have to generate yourself. So that can be very challenging. It's stressful at times. And not only do we have to fund ourselves, but also all of our staff, right? And so I have hourly staff that help me run the laboratory, and I have to think about them too. So it can, so there's some stress there. There's a lot of pressure at times. However, on the positive side, and I want to say that I love my job regardless of the stresses that come with, making things work financially. But some of the great things, because I support myself, there's a lot of flexibility in what I can do. I can devote all of my time to tinkering around in the lab. I can devote all of my time to, crafting a new idea for a proposal. I can do whatever I want, as long as I can support myself and my staff at the end of the day. So there's a lot of creative flexibility, which is something that is really important for me as a researcher. So despite the challenges, there are really great things about working in a 100% soft money funded institution. Yeah, I think that's probably the gist of what I'll say at this point.
Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea about the soft money thing, so learned a lot. Kate?
Yeah, so in terms of challenges and rewards of the position, I guess I'll say a little about how. So my initial first year was funded primarily. So similar to Kathleen, I think funding is one of the challenges of my position. I am a hard money researcher, meaning or staff member at the Bureau of Geology, meaning I'm in a different situation from Kathleen where I don't have to raise money for my salary. That said, my salary is funded by the legislator in New Mexico. So the legislature comes up with a funding amount for the Bureau of Geology, and my program gets a certain amount of that funding, and then my salary comes out of that funding. So it's actually really limited in terms of how much I can actually pay myself, I guess. And I think that's very similar for a lot of state surveys where you're not necessarily getting paid a enormous salary, right? It's a pretty modest salary, generally speaking. And that is kind of a limitation of the position that it's not always a competitive salary compared to other jobs out there. That said, the position I'm in is incredibly rewarding. I run multiple 3-day workshops for legislators every year. And that includes also some river trips that I run for legislators. I get to do a lot of really fun, creative things to help people learn about water issues in New Mexico. And I find that facilitating those opportunities for people is really, really rewarding. So while I feel underpaid at times, I also am extremely grateful for this job, and it's incredibly fun, albeit stressful at times. Though I think that's kind of the main challenge is not just the salary of it, but also like lobbying the legislator for the appropriate amount of funding to run my exact program. So it's not quite soft money, but it's kind of, in a way, soft money. It's just a different avenue to getting that funding than like NSF grants or like DOE grants or things like that. It's more on like state level funding.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Gunter, you want to add?
Sure. So I'm in a mixed position, and now that everybody know about the term soft money, because I am half soft money, half hard money. But most of my salary comes from the National Science Foundation that is being sent to NCAR because of the community efforts that we do. And so I'm going to start with some of the reward in my positions. The global climate model is called the community Earth system model that we develop at NCAR is a community model. It's open source, so it means that everybody in this room here could download it and run it if they want to. And part of my position is to not only develop the model, land ISO sheets, but it's also to help the community run it and do their science. So that's very rewarding. So it's like I can be a researcher and a teacher to some extent without being in the strict academic environment. And what's also rewarding is that through this modeling effort, I can also try to better understand how the world, function or interacts in its entirety. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. And that's something I really like about my job. The other thing is that I have a fairly well, I can have a good work-life balance in the sense that I have an 8-year-old son, and when I need to pick him up from school early, I'm not tied to an 8 to 5 schedule. I can leave early, do what I need to do for him, or come in late, etc. At the end of the day, what people want is the job to get done. Whether I do it at night, morning, that's fine by them. And so this is an incredible flexibility that should not be undermined. It's amazing. So for the challenges, like I said, I'm half self-money. So it means that I need to find half of my salary through grants. And this it's stressful because you never know whether your grant will get funded. So, you typically write 2 or 3, hopefully to get one. And the stress in addition to what Kathleen talked about is that it is hard to have a long-term planning for your career or for your family. So typically, for example, NSF grants are 3-year grants. So that's your time frame. Where will I be for the next 3 years? So if you say, I'm going to move to, I don't know, California because of this job that it's going to be partly soft money. Well, if your time span is just 3 years, that's not super great when you plan to try to root yourself and create a life for your kids. So that's definitely a challenge. Another challenge is that we are being always asked to do more with less. It's a trend that we see, and this leads to burnout and mental health problem for people. And this is something that there's some awareness that grows with it. And this is something that even everybody here, and I would encourage you to be aware of this in the future of your career, even as a graduate student, that this should not be taken lightly. It is a real thing. And so sometimes the challenge is to say no. And it might sound simple, but sometimes it's very hard to say no to to people who ask you for help. So that's that.
Thank you for sharing that, Gunter. Demetrios?
So I will start with some differences. I wouldn't call them challenges, but for many people might be challenging environment to work. So I will start with the main difference between doing research for a national lab and particularly a DOE national lab that like Argonne compared to a tenure track position. Your research needs to be aligned with the goals and priorities of the laboratory, the division, and the department you're working for. Like the department that your lab actually is part of, which means that like in principle, if you are in a tenure track position, as long as you can fund your research, you can do research on anything and everything. I wouldn't say that this has been a restriction for me personally, but I can see why this might be a challenging for people who want to do very specific things. They need to find a way to align them and show to your supervisor, your division directors, and everyone that what you are doing is relevant for the aims and scopes of basically how this is connected to the mission of the national lab you are working with. Now, most of the stuff at Argonne and most of the DOE labs, I assume, are also soft money, which means you are writing a lot of proposals, small proposals, large proposals, but I have been writing, I would say at least every month, one or every 2 months, like a couple of 3. So we have a constant source of funding, not just for us, as everyone says, I love interacting with students. So if I want to support a student and work with me, it means that I need to write the grants, particularly to bring a student over the summer or work with his advisor, co-advising. All these requires some work from your side. Now, what's the beauty of working for a national lab? More than often, you have access to resources that I would argue that even top universities don't have access. I'm very happy. I have all the computing facilities I need. I have all the resources I need for my proposal, for my projects, because everything comes from a proposal. So although it sounds that we don't have flexibility, at the same time, because everything is streamlined, I never had something to wait for this let's say, this equipment to arrive. Everything is in time, everything is efficient. Now, the other thing that I love, and it's really rewarding, is how close we work with people from industry. Like, I think the path from applied research to application is extremely fast compared to any academic research, because we are working with industry, we are working with the decision makers, we are working with policy makers. You see very quickly things that were R&D like a couple of years ago. Today we have a pilot program to test them, and hopefully within years you will see them actually being applied. The other thing that I find it exciting is that more than often you are asked to be part of panels and give suggestions for future directions, workshops where people from academia, people from national labs basically combining forces to come with the new standards, with priorities. So while you are not in academia, you are working very, very close with people who are doing research from all sectors, basically, academia, labs, and I would add the private sector, which I find it very fascinating.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think we are getting close to the end, so maybe we'll take questions from the audience. Tyler, you want to start?
A reminder, if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Here's a quick one. Is it necessary, or how important is it to do a postdoc and then go into this type of job sector? Is there any added benefit to do a postdoc if I wanted to do this type of job? Kathleen, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think for my position, which is research oriented, the more research experience that you have, the better really qualified you are for this kind of job. So do you need to do a postdoc? No. But does it give you more research experience if you do a postdoc? Yes. So, I mean, certainly not a requirement, but it probably means you have more papers on your CV, and all of these things are important for any academic job, including, soft money funded ones. So that's my take.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, I think for my specific job, was a postdoc necessary? No. I think I did my postdoc at a time when I thought I wanted to be a professor. And in that regard, for getting my job as a professor, it was definitely really necessary. For the job I'm in now, I don't necessarily think it was necessary, but that said, I really loved my postdoc. I would still do it again, even knowing that I was going into a position kind of away from research. I think I learned a lot of valuable experiences from it. I think postdocs can be a really good way to kind of gain experience while looking for other positions. They are kind of limiting in that, it's 1 to 3 years or so of funding generally on average. There are some that are longer, some that are shorter, but it's a pretty limited amount of funding. But it gives you that amount of time to kind of explore the job market. And I think that can be really valuable, having that kind of time after your PhD to kind of explore your options while still gaining valuable experience.
Okay. Gunter, Demetrios, do you have anything to add? We have a few questions we'd like to get to. So if you have something, go
I
ahead,
would say
Demetrios.
that for the position I have, research, computational climate scientist or climate scientist in general, you definitely don't need a postdoc. Having said that, I would say that 50% probably from the people who hold these positions do have postdocs and do get these positions after doing postdocs at the lab. So I would say that it absolutely helps to have a postdoc, although not required. Yes.
Yeah, I can reflect a little bit on what was said. Is that in my position, it's the same. You don't necessarily need a postdoc. Like I get this position, by not finishing my first postdoc, but then you are competing then with people who have postdocs. So unless you have like something more to valuable that you can add that these other people with a little bit more experience have, then this is what you'd be facing.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have two questions specifically for Kate, so maybe we can combine them and ask. One is, do you ever miss doing research, especially given your position is mostly about teaching and outreach? And then there is another question for you, which is, what about the 3 years as an assistant professor? What were the reasons that swayed you away from academia, or you got interested in this position? And could you see those reasons prior to joining as an assistant professor? Or is it like more of a trial and error thing?
Yeah, so do I miss doing research? Not really. To be completely honest, I am very lucky to be at a state survey that is connected to a university. So if I wanted to go back to doing some research, it wouldn't be very difficult for me to do so. I think finding state surveys, I think a lot of state surveys are like that, where they are connected to a university, but not all of them are. So if you're interested in working at a state survey or doing outreach for one, that's definitely something to ask during the interview process is, will you have the ability to continue doing research if you want? Most places will be able to make a like a portion of your job be research oriented. So whether that's 20%, 30% of your job, you should be able to still have an option to do research if you're working at a state survey. I personally don't miss it that much, but that's just a personal preference. I feel really, really fulfilled with the outreach that I get to do. Could I have foreseen the issues of my disillusionment with academia? It's really tough to say. I started being an assistant professor in 2020, fall of 2020. So I started by teaching remotely and really dealing with the pandemic, in addition to some personal illness issues that really just set me on a path of like feeling like I was falling behind, kind of, and just feeling like I didn't really enjoy what I was doing. And I'm not sure I could have foreseen any of those issues. I Yeah, I think it was kind of very circumstantial to the pandemic, to some personal issues of my own, and it just ended up. So I guess my answer is it's more trial and error. But that being said, I want to say that like there's nothing wrong with going into academia if you get a professor position and you end up not liking it. There's nothing wrong with leaving. You know, you're still gaining really valuable experiences as an assistant professor. And there's no reason that you should know exactly like, yes, I want this to be my career for the next 40 years. Like, no, you can change careers. And that was something that was really hard for me of like, oh, but I landed this great position, like feeling guilty about leaving academia. But really, it's like, it just wasn't working for me. And there was a better position out there for me. And so I think often we think of academia as like the pinnacle of something you must achieve, but I think that's baloney. I think there's plenty of really great careers out there outside of academia, as all of our panelists here have shown. Yeah, and I see a question in the Q&A that says, can a visa holder work at a state survey? And the answer is yes. We have a number of people at New Mexico, at the New Mexico Bureau of Geology, who are visa holders, who are from like the UK, India. Let's see, we have someone from China. We have various, all over the world people, and I think that's pretty similar at other state surveys as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Kate. And it's just I think one takeaway hopefully from this panel is just being open to pivoting and taking opportunities as they come and deciding to take another opportunity and exploring your options. That last question that you answered is a nice pivot to a question with regard to being geographically constricted. If one wants to live or stay in a specific region, what tips do you have for finding a job that fits within these location priorities? And I guess I will add, we wanted to invite panelists that, as far as we know, visa holders can work at each of these institutions. So if you might as well just jump on the answer that Kate gave and address that, if you have something to contribute. Who wants to go first? At this point, let's just open it up.
I'll start by saying like absolutely people with visas can work at DOE's national labs, I think in most of them. To answer the question about region, as far as I know, most of the labs, as far as you are open about this, offer remote positions today. There are some restrictions for visa holders that they're too specific to talk about, but I would say that absolutely there are remote positions, both for postdocs and permanent positions, but also for students. We are very open working with people who are within the states. Things get a little bit trickier if you want to work from abroad. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead,
go ahead.
Gunter. You go.
Gunter,
Okay.
go ahead, and then we'll go to Kate. Yeah.
So to my end, it's very similar to what Dimitrios said. You can work. We have many people who have visa. That being said, it could be very stressful to always be on a visa that you have to renew over and over and over, depending on the country that you're from. We have people from countries where to get the visa they have to travel home sometimes 10,000 kilometers from the US, and then it takes them more than a month to get their visa, and so this is a hardship that you need to account for. But it's the same. You can like if within the continental US, or you can work remotely, so you don't necessarily have to move to work at NCAR. And you also have the, you can also come and visit for a week or two, and it's paid for by the institution, so that you can connect physically with your peers. So, but yeah, I would just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of the geographic constriction, I think looking for positions that are remote is a really great strategy of like, there are lots of remote positions out there these days that allow you to kind of live wherever. That would be kind of my first set of advice. My second set of advice would be looking at kind of your state funded entities. So like a state survey, or your office of the engineer for your given state. Your given state is going to have like a bunch of different entities that deal with, well, I'm speaking specifically about like water issues, but I'm sure other kind of focuses of geomorphology would be, or earth surface processes are very applicable to lots of different types of problems. And so being open to looking for kind of local opportunities, whether that's at the city level or at the state level, I think that can open a lot of doors.
Okay, thank you. It is the top of the hour. There's one question here that if you guys could, I don't know how quickly you could do this, but is there any advice you would give your former self in 5 years, or from your former self 5 years ago? If you can do that very quickly, and then we will sign off, I think, for the day. Maybe that's too broad of a question to answer very quickly, but if there's anything that you want to share very briefly, I think that'd be a nice place to end. Demetrios?
Yeah, I would try to be brief. Firstly, be open, reach out to people. When you are looking for a job, your job is to let people know that you are looking for a job. Also, I would say that when you apply for jobs, rejections stink. But do you know what stink more? Getting a job that is not good fit for you. So I would say keep your mind open, and make sure that when you are in interviews, ask questions. Make sure that you also fit there, and they fit your needs. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask help from peers, seniors, or even younger than you.
Yeah, and I think on that same note, just very broad advice, but think seriously about what you want professionally, what you want personally, because those things are really intertwined. And how do you get there? My position is not for everybody. Do you want rigidity? Do you want flexibility? Start thinking about those things, and we are just a sprinkling of the options that are available in the job market. So it's okay to be picky, I think. So think hard about what you want. That's my 2 cents.
Well said, I think.
If I can add on all of the good advice here, one thing that I think I really lacked when I was a graduate student is how to communicate what I am doing and how to get people interested in what I'm doing, because I was so focused into the nitty-gritty details. And so I just thought I just expected everybody to know what I did, but think about that when you're in grad school and you focus on your research, you're the expert. you have a few people that are expert as well, but you're on the top of the food chain. So try to explain what you're doing to people that know nothing about science, or maybe or nothing in your area, to see if they can understand what you're doing. And just being able to do that can get you to places that you wouldn't have, that you couldn't imagine. And it would also make people like you better, because they can see that you know how to explain hard concept very easily. The other thing that I would say is that you might not think that some people might provide you with good advice or could be beneficial for your career, et cetera, et cetera. But whatever you do, never burn any bridges, because people change, people evolve, and one person that you think right now wouldn't be a good contact for you might become one. I learned this the hard way. And one advice that I would give myself again, that I would do again, is don't be afraid to reach out to people. The study I went into ice modeling, I got it by on my last day on my first internship on biogeochemistry. I knocked on a scientist's door that I had never met before, and we started he opened the door and we started a conversation. That conversation led me to where I am today. So I would do that again, and I'm glad I wasn't shy to do it.
Yeah, I want to, I think that's some really great advice from Gunter, to communicate, like learn about communicating your science and your skills, both in writing and also verbally, is extremely important. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. I think that was something that I was terrified of doing as a PhD student. Like sending an email to a senior researcher seemed so scary, but really it's just like, you just got to do it. You got to send those emails, and like cold emailing people, like you got to do it. It seems scary, but it's really worthwhile in terms of opening up the amount of opportunities that come your way. And then the last thing, like, what would I tell myself 5 years ago? I would tell myself that it's all going to be okay, that like you're going to find something and it's going to be the right thing for you. And it might take a little while, it might take some trial and error, but it's possible. So I think sometimes we worry a lot about the stress of finding a job, and it is extremely stressful. I don't want to minimize that. But also just remember that there are plenty of opportunities out there and you'll find something.
Yes, great. Thank you. I think that's a really lovely sentiment to end on, unless Gunter, you have something to add to that.
I would say that, to follow up on writing code email, that's, don't be afraid to do this, and don't be sad if you don't hear back from researchers like in 3 days, 7 days. On my end, it very happens that an email get just lost. Do not be afraid to send it again and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure you had it. I really would like to hear your thought on my email. And you'll see that some scientists will reply to that, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you. Things happen. People are busy.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Well, we are almost 10 minutes over the hour, so I don't want to take up any more of our panelists' time, but I want to thank you all very much for joining us this morning and hopefully shedding some light on the potential careers out there for everybody that joined today. So thank you again. I think this was really great. All of your experiences are very valuable. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.